Tipp FM investigates. Funded by the News Reporting Scheme. Disability in Tipperary.
I do it to help people, because I know there's so many people out there that are struggling, and even parents who are scared to stand up to the HSE and the government. And I said, I'm 15 years old, but I started this when I was 11, and I was like, I'm going to do something about it and just try and help as many people as I can. And I still have the same mindset now.
Tipperary teenager Cara Darmody is one of Ireland's most prominent young disability rights campaigners. Originally from Ardfinnan, Cara has become a leading voice in the fight for better autism and disability services. Over the past number of years, Cara has campaigned tirelessly to highlight long waiting lists for autism assessments, delays in essential disability services, and the state's failure to meet its legal obligations under the Disability Act. Cara, what first motivated you to get involved with advocacy work for people with disabilities?
I suppose it all started when I was just 11 years old, and I saw my mum and my dad struggling with my two brothers at home, because I have two severely disabled brothers, and just seeing them struggle at home, even though I was so young, something just kind of clicked with me that there was an issue here. I kind of knew from a young age that they weren't being treated the same as what other people might get treated, because people with autism kind of get treated like second-class citizens. And I realised that there's a very bad problem here with services and autism. And I realised that while I was only a young girl, I saw my parents not getting any sleep because of them. And it was really tough for me to see that just as a young person. And I said that I was going to do something about it, and that kind of motivated me, I suppose. I kind of realised that it's not just our family that's struggling, but that there's so many people struggling with this. And I decided that I was going to do something about it and sit the junior psychomaths exam for charity, and just to raise awareness about autism discrimination out there.
And your campaigns mainly focus on waiting lists for children and adults with disabilities trying to access services. Is this a big challenge people in Tipperary are facing?
The waiting list issue has always been a big concern of mine, and in Tipperary, it's been disgraceful. And I know some places in Ireland are doing a bit better than in our county, and I've raised a lot of awareness about this issue. And I suppose that's why I'm so proud of Cara's fund, because I got 30 million euros worth of government funding. And I'm very happy to be helping people, because that's my ultimate aim of the campaign. But I suppose the waiting lists, they're just too big.
And for anyone who is not aware, can you explain what Cara's fund is?
So basically, in June 2024, I started campaigning outside up in Dublin once a week. That ultimately led to me getting my first 10 million euros from Simon Harris, because he called it Cara's Fund. But then I did more protests last year. So in May, I did a 50-hour protest outside the front of Leinster House, where I slept in a tent. Then this December, I slept outside in Storm Bram, which was way worse. It was freezing cold in the middle of winter. Because of my protest, I ended up getting another 20 million euros to Cara's Fund in this year's budget. And why that's so major is because over 6,500 children have now got some sort of service, or have gotten a little bit of additional help that they wouldn't have gotten without Cara's Fund since then. And I suppose those two protests, they made a big difference. But unfortunately, since I've left the streets in December, there has not been a lot of progress made on this issue.
And would you say your campaigns have been successful so far? And have you made progress for not only families in Tipperary, but across Ireland?
We told that your campaigning is making a difference, and 10 million euros is now going to go towards services, assessments of needs, waiting lists, all that stuff, because of your campaign. It's a great feeling. But I suppose I feel with all of my campaigns, I've definitely raised a lot more national awareness on this issue, that even people who don't have disabilities and don't understand what it's like to have a disability, I think everyone should be aware of the issue. And I think that is one thing I've succeeded with my campaign. But I suppose it's been hard, and I just think that it's very hard to understand disability unless you have to deal with it,
So what would you say are some of the most urgent issues people with disabilities in Tipperary and across Ireland are facing today?
I suppose there's a numerous amount of challenges, but I think the biggest challenge is when people need a service or assessment right now or in the next couple of weeks or months, and they have to wait 5 or 6 years to kind of get the assessment that they need. For an assessment of needs, let's just say, they could be waiting 5 or 6 years for that. But that's just so wrong, because and it's the only issue in Ireland where the government are breaking the law on, and I think that's so wrong. And I think that's what it all comes down to, is that I just think people with autism and disabilities, that they need certain services, and they need that bit of extra help and support, and a lot of them just don't get it.
And have you seen any progress on these issues since you started your advocacy work and campaigns?
The waiting list in Tipperary, like they used to be around 4 or 5 years, and it has reduced down to about 2.5 to 2.25 years. But that's still not enough. Like, more money needs to be dedicated towards Cara's fund, because there should not be that long of a waiting list. And like, I just think like waiting lists in Ireland for like assessments of needs, like it's increasing exponentially. So like ultimately, while my campaign has made a lot of progress, it's like the moment I kind of go off the street, like the progress kind of stops being made.
And other than waiting lists, what are some other barriers that individuals and families are facing?
I think there's challenges in every single sector, but ultimately the government are breaking the law with with this assessments of needs issue, and I think that like it's kind of like a race, like a hurdles race, you know, like you don't just like jump the 10th hurdle straight away, like you have to kind of do it one by one at a time. So I think that the first step that the government really need to do is stop breaking the law on the assessments of needs waiting list issue. Then once they do that, then they need to focus on the next task, because there's so many issues in other sectors as well, but it will ultimately be driven by that.
Do you think there's enough awareness on these issues, not only nationally but in the government and among decision makers?
I think a lot of people, it's not that they don't understand disability, but I think it's just like when you don't kind of like have to take care of a disabled person, and maybe you don't see it as much as someone else does. You like, just some people just aren't aware of like the amount of help and support that they need. And I suppose like a lot of people, even like in the government, like they would not have experience of dealing with disability.
And have you received much support from local TDs, councillors and local representatives?
Everyone tells me I'm right, but there's very few people that actually say that they're going to do something about it. And ultimately, like local TDs and councillors, a lot of them can't actually do anything about this issue. Right now, like we're in contact with Michael Murphy trying to get more money towards Cara's fund and all that, and we're obviously really appreciative of that. But people like, let's say, independent TDs, like they don't have a lot of power over this issue. People like to talk, but there's not a lot of action done. I want people to do something about this issue. Taoiseach, the Taoiseach can really do something about this issue. And like, there's not many people that will actually be able to fix this, because ultimately the government are breaking the law. And until they stop doing that, there's not going to be a lot that the ordinary person listening here can do, or even the ordinary councillor or TD. But all I'll say is I'm not going to be going away anytime soon, and I'm going to keep raising awareness about this issue.
So Mark, for you as Cara's dad and as a father who has children who has an autism diagnosis, how much progress has Cara's campaigns made for your families in Tipperary and nationally?
But sure, it's shocking really to think that she was proposing at the start, she was going to fundraise €100. She ended up raising 82,000 for 2 local schools. But then, like, to bring her campaign within like 7 days, she was in front of Leo Varadkar at the time. Like, it was a shock for us, and to think that somebody could have that impact and very quickly have that impact. But I suppose where it got real was where she started to get government funding. That's where, like, she's playing senior hurling now, and that's very hard to deal with. Like, a couple of days before her first exam, and she's meeting Minister Norman Foley, who is the minister in charge of children in this country. She's dealing with the decision makers and trying to force them into a position where they've no choice. Like, that will follow her to the grave, literally. So those were the moments when you're being officially, like, if you look at the fuel protests, and like, I mean, when the government said that we don't negotiate with only national organisations, but sure, they're negotiating with a 15-year-old, and they're personally crediting her with funding. So to be fair to them, but she's not finished yet, and all they've done is empower her now to seek far greater ambition. So we'll do our best to support her in any way that we can.
And from the perspective of a parent who would also be trying to gain access to these services, and from being involved with Cara's campaign, is there enough supports in Tipperary?
In Tipperary seems to be, I remember we had a meeting at the time with the Minister, Anne Rabbitte, and she told us that Tipperary was a disaster. Number one, the worst by far. As I sit here today, there's 19 positions above in the CDNT. There's only 8 filled. There's no psychologist. There's meant to be 4 speech and language therapists. There's only 1 person. They're just, Cara's one big ask is a national and international recruitment campaign. The HSE are so reluctant to let anyone in from external to this country. They just don't want to do it, and they're fighting it tooth and nail. But she'll keep fighting them back on that. But it's to get the government to force them to do that, because until we get therapists into these buildings, whether you talk about assessment needs, services, any issue whatsoever, if there's no person there to give out the therapy or assessment, you're dead in the water.
So what do you think has contributed to Cara's success, and what do you believe she brings to the table when it comes to advocating for the rights of people with disabilities?
It's the one law they break, so that's why people often wonder, why is it assessment of needs? Because that's where they're vulnerable. They break the law. She brings a very youth mindset into a very serious issue. So it's like, as I say, she has sat in front of the last three Taoiseach and told them that they're breaking the law. The courage it took to do that, but she does it respectfully. And I think, just a very quick joke, when she said to Micheál Martin, "You're like my best friend," she said, and I like you on so many levels, but you are breaking the law. They don't try to deny that. So that's where the pressure needs to be put on them. But no, absolutely, there's services should be a right in this country. And unfortunately, even I as a parent, you get so angry when your child does not get services. You get so upset. I could never see myself doing what she does. But she can go in there in a non-angry way. But that's how she got that 30 million. She's used their laws against them. Ye wrote the assessment needs law. You're breaking that law. So you need to come up with money now. So that tactic has worked dramatically for her, I would say.
And so what do you think are the next steps for Cara and for your family?
I suppose she's been empowered from a very young age. So, like, the things she's asking us to support her on are not minor. They're like sitting the junior side 11, sitting the leaving cert when you're still in national school, campaigning, sleeping on the street for 50 hours. Like, that was like a military operation. She's come to us with a couple of huge asks over the next month. So she's going to escalate her campaign in a huge way. So let's watch this space.
Tipp FM investigates. Funded by the News Reporting Scheme. Disability in Tipperary.